Weekend at Bernie's, or as I like to call it, Night of the Bernie Dead, is a comedy movie with a unique gimmick. That gimmick being, of course, that the main character, Bernie, is dead, and to add to the oddball wacky shenanigans, no one can tell that Bernie has actually passed away. Released in 1989, Weekend at Bernie's focuses on two employees of an insurance company, Larry and Richard, played by Andrew McCarthy and Jonathan Silverman, where after discovering a money embezzlement scheme, their boss Bernie, played by Terry Kaiser, invites them to stay at his beach house for the weekend. But unbeknownst to the two young employees, it was Bernie who embezzled the money, and plans to have Larry and Richard killed. However, it's Bernie himself who gets murdered, where upon arriving at the beach house, Larry and Richard find his lifeless body, and when other people arrive, no one notices that he's dead. To make the most of the tropical weekend, Larry and Richard continue the illusion that Bernie is still alive, where in true comedy movie fashion, oddball shenanigans ensue. So today we're going on holiday to discover what secrets we may find out about Weekend at Bernie's. That's if there is any secrets, for all we know there might not be. So with that, let's look into 10 things that you didn't know about Weekend at Bernie's. Number 10. Inspiration. It is said that Weekend at Bernie's was inspired by the 1983 Hindi comedy Just Let It Go Friends, which, like Weekend at Bernie's, focuses on two characters who are stuck in a wacky situation involving a dead body. Despite being made on an extremely low budget, Just Let It Go Friends was a movie loved and embraced in India. The movie was also seen as a satire on real situations and issues of the time, like corruption. Whether it was inspired or not, there does seem to be parallels between Weekend at Bernie's and Just Let It Go Friends. The screenplay for Weekend at Bernie's was written by Robert Clan, who had previously co-written National Lampoon's European Vacation. As for the director, well, if you want to get someone to direct your crazy oddball comedy, then of course you're going to hire the guy who previously directed this. Yeah, Weekend at Bernie's was directed by Ted Kotcheff, who 7 years earlier directed First Blood. That's insane. I can't even. How do you go from First Blood to Weekend at Bernie's? Hey, there's nothing wrong with that, but you just could not get two movies that could be any more different from one another. Number 9. Original title. The title of Weekend at Bernie's is perfectly fine. It does have a comedic twist and lets you know that this movie is going to be about a weekend away. However, according to IMDb, the working title of the movie was Hot and Cold. I guess this potential title makes sense, as it's a reference to Bernie's dead body itself, as it's now cold on the account that he's dead. But it just doesn't have that comedy element. To me, Hot and Cold sounds like it could be the title for a suspenseful thriller, not a movie where two guys staple a wig on a dead man's head. So I think the change was for the best. I love how in IMDb someone had to make a correction that although the movie is called Weekend at Bernie's, the film actually doesn't take place over the entire weekend, with the movie wrapping up on the Saturday afternoon. So therefore it's not a weekend at Bernie's. Well, I guess a day and a half at Bernie's just didn't have the right ring to it. Either way, Weekend at Bernie's has one of the best movie taglines ever, which reads, "Bernie Lomax would make the perfect host, except for one small thing. He's dead." Yes, that would most definitely be a problem. Number 8. Casting possibilities. When it came to casting the comedy double act of Larry and Richard, in the movie's early stages of production, it was planned to cast Corey Feldman and Corey Haim in the parts, and thus that would have made Weekend at Bernie's a two Coreys movie, as at that time the two young stars were starring in several movies together, usually teen comedies. However, it was decided to make the characters Larry and Richard older characters, which makes sense as the two Coreys were teenagers at the time. Why on earth would teenagers be working for an insurance company? Interestingly, John Cryer was originally cast in the Larry part, until he was replaced by Andrew McCarthy. In fact, McCarthy was originally offered the role of the more down-to-earth Richard character, but after reading the script, he just gravitated more to the more carefree Larry character. And let's not forget that Weekend at Bernie's also stars 80s favourite Catherine Mary Stewart as the character Gwen Saunders, who ends up getting stuck in all the dead comedy hijinks. Number 7. Filming location. The shoot for Weekend at Bernie's took place at New York City and Wilmington, North Carolina. There are a few quirks that happened along the way during filming. Supposedly, the Bernie stunt double suffered several injuries during filming, including broken ribs. Ouch! It was from filming the scene where Bernie's lifeless body is being dragged by the boat. And yeah, looking at it, it does look pretty dangerous. I hope you got a pay rise that day. According to Andrew McCarthy, Weekend at Bernie's director Ted Kotcheff could get a little abrasive from time to time during the shoot, especially if he felt the comedy just wasn't working. While filming the movie's North Carolina scenes, McCarthy would also play board games to keep himself entertained, particularly Monopoly. A lot of fans visit the beach where the movie was filmed in order to get a glimpse of the house that was used for Weekend at Bernie's, but are always left disappointed when they discover that it's not there. That's because the house was built by the production, specifically to be used for filming, and that once filming had wrapped up, the house was demolished, as not to interfere with the local wildlife. So sadly, if you had high hopes of one day visiting Bernie's house, well, I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but it simply isn't there. Number 6. There was lots of improvising. Andrew McCarthy has said a couple of times in interviews that while making Weekend at Bernie's, there was this sense of anything goes, with crazy ideas being made up on the spot, like throwing Bernie over a balcony or stapling a wig to his head, and so on, implying that the more abuse that was inflicted on Bernie's body, the funnier it was. The Monopoly scene came about because McCarthy brought a Monopoly board game on the set, having previously played it the night before, and suggested, why don't we have Bernie play Monopoly? And alas, the scene was filmed. So it does sound like making Weekend at Bernie's was lots of fun, and that some of the movie's most memorable moments were created by the cast and crew just thinking up on the spot more outrageous and ridiculous situations to put Bernie in, with McCarthy further saying, you could do anything to Bernie. Number 5. Strained relations. So as mentioned, Weekend at Bernie's was directed by Ted Kotcheff, and he seemed fully invested in making the movie a comedy classic. So much so, he even has a cameo in the movie, in one of the most memorable scenes, where Richard takes Gwen home where things start to heat up, only for Richard's father to come out in his underpants, with Richard explaining it's the butler. The brief but memorable part of Richard's father was played by Kotcheff himself. So that kind of shows his level of commitment to the movie. I mean, after all, he didn't turn up in his underpants in First Blood. However, in the movie's aftermath, things got a little prickly, where in 2014, Kotcheff and Weekend at Bernie's scriptwriter Robert Klein sued MGM and 20th Century Fox, claiming that they didn't get certain profits from the movie's success that they were promised in their contracts. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I always find it a shame when legal issues and court cases get involved in creativity, but, you know, c'est la vie. Such is life. Number 4. Bernie around the world. The main poster that was used to promote Weekend at Bernie's was this one, where we see Richard and Larry on the beach with Bernie. It's not particularly visually striking, but it gets the job done, as we can see that Richard is the more sensible, cautious one, and Larry is the laid-back, easy-going one, and Bernie, well, Bernie is dead. There was this second poster of our main characters laying on the sand. This one is more visually appealing, and has more of an illustrated feel about it, but the problem is you can't really see Bernie. Yeah, I get it, the joke is he's dead, and his lifeless body is plummeting into the sand, but it's easy to overlook this. If I hadn't seen the movie, I probably wouldn't have noticed Bernie and not known what the movie was about. Then there's this widespread poster, and this one does the opposite this time, as the main focus is solely on Bernie, be that his dead legs sticking out of the sand, with the Larry and Richard characters walking away into the distance, this time accompanied by Gwen. I guess it's meant to represent the movie's ending, where Bernie's body shows up yet again on the beach, with the three main characters fleeing, as to avoid any more odd adventures with Bernie's lifeless carcass. Interestingly, in 2001, for the movie's DVD release in the UK, some of the movie's stronger language was cut out to make Weekend at Bernie's more family-friendly, with the original actors coming back to record new lines to replace the cuss words. Yet, returning to record new lines a whole 12 years after Weekend at Bernie's initial release. And Germany refused to show the wig being stapled on the head scene when broadcast on TV. I guess they just found that scene a little too ghoulish and gruesome. Number 3. Sequel. So considering Weekend at Bernie's was a modest success, there naturally was a sequel. However, for some reason, Weekend at Bernie's 2 didn't come out until 4 years later. Seriously, at that stage, Bernie would have been a stinky, rotten corpse in a state of decay. But it happened and we got Weekend at Bernie's 2, with Andrew McCarthy, Jonathan Silverman and Terry Kaiser all reprising their roles. I remember my parents rented it out from the local video store when it was a new release when I was a kid, and I watched it with them and I found it enjoyable enough. I remember there was a voodoo element going on, where Bernie now moves when he hears music, and I always thought that was pretty fun. However, Weekend at Bernie's 2 was trashed by the critics, and it doesn't seem to be as remembered as much as the original. Although, once again, the tagline is brilliant, as it reads, "Bernie is back, and he's still dead." Brilliant. I mean, what more do you need to know? Over the years, there have been talks and whispers of a third Weekend at Bernie's movie being made, but nothing has come of it. I read somewhere that some independent filmmakers actually made a Weekend at Bernie's 3 fan film, which I think would be interesting to see. But let's face it, at this stage, Bernie would be nothing more than a mere skeleton. Number 2. Life imitating art. The story of Weekend at Bernie's is so absurd and ridiculous, it could only exist as an oddball comedy movie, and in no way be a reflection on real life. Right? Well, actually no. As insane as it sounds, a similar thing did happen in real life. It was 2011 when two friends paid another friend a visit at his home, only to discover that their friend had passed away. However, rather than contact the appropriate authorities, they decided to take their friend's body out for a fun night on the town, to give their friend one last hurrah, if you will. You know, go out with a bang. So yes, these two guys were pretty much carrying their dead friend's remain out for an epic night crawl. However, when the authorities found out about the lifeless night out, they weren't too impressed and didn't exactly see the funny side of it, as the two friends were arrested and charged with abusing a corpse. In fact, just recently when Andrew McCarthy went on the Drew Barrymore show, they started talking about Weekend at Bernie's, where Barrymore said that there is a folklore that after her grandfather passed away, his friends also took his body out of the morgue and partied with it. Okay, seriously, how many times has this actually happened? So the next time you watch Weekend at Bernie's and think that the whole thing is ridiculous, just remember it kind of sort of happened in real life. Twice. Number 1. The critics thought that Weekend at Bernie's was lifeless. Weekend at Bernie's was released in July 1989, and it made more than anticipated, bringing in a tidy $30.2 million on a $15 million budget, and would continue to make a large profit on home video. However, the critics weren't laughing. They thought the comedy was lacking and tired, and some found the concept to be tasteless and crude. But Weekend at Bernie's still had its fans who were on board and loved the movie, and it's become a cult classic, with its humour being more appreciated by its detractors with the passing of time. So yeah, the movie has a big loyal fan base. In fact, Weekend at Bernie's has even been analysed and deduced, with some claiming that it has a deeper meaning other than just being a crazy comedy, where one academic felt that the movie was a satire on the upper class of the late 1980s, who were so wrapped up in their own self-importance, they are oblivious to the fact that Bernie is dead. So who would have thought that Weekend at Bernie's was actually quite a deep movie after all? Personally, I really like Weekend at Bernie's. It was frequently shown on TV during the 90s, and I always made an effort to watch it, and it always gave me a chuckle. If I look at the movie objectively, I guess it drags a little bit, in the sense that the main gist of the story is Bernie is dead, and these two guys convince people that he's still alive. But I feel like the movie takes a long time to get to that point. There's a lot of build-up and story building to get to that point. So maybe the script just needed to be trimmed and to be made a little bit tighter, to get there quicker, as there is a lot of exposition at the start. But that's just a nitpick, as it's still a great movie, and lots of fun. Yes, death is a pretty grim subject, but Weekend at Bernie's proves that comedy can make light of very serious issues, and remind us that sometimes it is okay to laugh. Especially on that one crazy weekend, when Larry and Richard went to Bernie's. It was a weekend that movie audiences have never gotten over and still makes them laugh. A comedy that people are dying to see. So I say check out Weekend at Bernie's. It's time to give this movie another watch. And if you're a newcomer, just keep in mind that it takes a bit of time to get to the main plot, but once it's there, it's all worth it. Anyway, I'm Minty, and if they ever remake Weekend at Bernie's, which they shouldn't, but if they do, they totally need to cast Gary Oldman as Bernie. That'd be awesome. See ya!